Hey there, beer friends. So it's been a while since I've done like a beer review slash tasting. Um, and my husband goes every week with his friends for beers. So while he's gone, I thought I'll have a beer myself and I can do a video. Um, Something I've been doing the last couple of months is a lot of like online training courses. So I started mastering food and beer pairing from Beerology. I did an online course through a university in British Columbia about beer recipe design. And then I started my WSET beer level 2 course. And initially I was keeping up with it, and like it's only a 5-week course, and for 4 of those weeks we had like a guided webinar tasting that was live, so I was doing those. I sort of fell off part of the way though, just because the way that the course studies matched up with the live tastings, they didn't actually match up, so I wanted to wait until I did the tastings in order to submit my tasting results. And so I just sort of got behind. So I have like 4 or 5 days left in the course. And like if I wanted to actually do the whole thing, I have like 7 beers left to taste. So that's probably not going to happen, but I'm going to do a couple of them. So one thing that I wanted to just talk about briefly is that there's always been some confusion, I think, between WSET and Cicerone, and they're very different. So Cicerone is mostly like self-guided, you do your own studying on your own time and then you take the exam when you're ready type of thing. WSET is different because they have like little quizzes as you go, and you're paying for like the instruction basically. So you can submit your tasting notes and then your instructor will reply and give you feedback. And then we also have the in-person tasting portion. So you're actually tasting in real time. You're going over how to fill out like the tasting notes together as a group. And then it's a short course, so it's only about 5 weeks. And then when you're done with that, you take your test whenever you're, ready. So they're very different. And the way that they approach the beer, what is it? Like how to group the styles of beer, I would say, is different. Cicerone really sort of groups beers based on like geography, which does make sense. So a lot of British styles are going to have similarities, German styles will have similarities, etc. But the way that WSET does it is they organize beers based on, is it like a hop-driven style, a malt-driven style, or a yeast-driven style? And then there's like a little subsection of that, which is like mixed fermentation beers. So basically, I think it makes a lot more sense. So if you're a hop-driven style, you are probably going to be like an American beer, but like an IPA, some of the hoppier lagers, like say a German Pilsner. If you're a malt-driven style, that means that the yeast is usually pretty neutral. They're not super hoppy, but you're gonna get a lot more of the malt characteristics, and then you can sort of determine which malts were used in that beer. So that would probably be a lot of like Irish and British styles. And then you've got yeast-driven styles, which are your German wheat beers, Belgian styles. Yeah, the Belgian styles. So with the yeast-driven styles, they actually break it down even further into 4 different subcategories. So we know with like lager yeast, there's really not going to be very many, yeast characteristics like at all. With ale yeast, it's usually pretty neutral unless it's like a British style, and it might be, a little fruity. But with the 4 that they really talk about in this course, it's mainly the ones where, when you smell it, it's like, wow, this is a example of this style. So we learn about Saison yeast, Weizen yeast, Abbey yeast, and wit beer. And so 3 of those are basically Belgian styles. So, when you're tasting, you can really kind of, like if you were to do like a blind tasting, you could taste the beer and you would know, okay, this is a yeast-driven style, so it's probably one of those 4 subsets of beers. And then you look at the malt character, and then you look at like, other characteristics. Is there any hop, characteristics? Is there any sourness, etc.? And then you can sort of determine what type of beer you're drinking. So I really like how the WSET sort of groups beers in that sense, because you know, you have beers that are hoppy that aren't just from the US, and you have beers that are malty that are not just from Britain. And so I feel like if you group it by the ingredients rather than the geography, for me, it helps kind of remember the styles of beer better than just trying to remember like which country is known for which beers and that kind of thing. I hope that makes sense. The other thing that the WSET does is they have this, what they call SAT, systematic approach to tasting. And I've talked about this before, but basically it's a sheet where you just kind of go through what the beer looks like the clarity, the color of the foam, the color of the beer, the foam, like head retention. And then you go through the like aromatics, like what are you smelling? Is it a really pronounced smell? Is it like a subtle smell? And then you taste it, and you talk about basically the physical characteristics, like what's the ABV? Is it high? Is it low? Medium? What's the carbonation like? What is the body, the mouthfeel? And then you again, after you've like swallowed and you've got sort of that what's called like retronasal aroma in your mouth, like through your nose, what are the aroma characteristics, and like are they different from what you smelled, you know, orthonasally? So I think this is really handy because it breaks it down like in a pretty clear manner, you know, with like color and you know the foam head and etc. And then they also have this what they call the beer lexicon, and basically it's just helpful to jog your memory in a way where you're tasting the beer and you're like, okay, this is really aromatic and hoppy. So what are some hop characteristic, you know, how would you describe them? And so you can look at like, is it like grass? Is it floral? Is it fruity? Is it spicy? Like all of these things. And then it gives you even like more of a breakdown. Is it, you know, and I'm not great at this, but like, is it rose? Is it, you know, jasmine? Is it apple or pear or banana? Is it clove or white pepper, black pepper? I mean, to me, this is where I don't do well. And that's why my food tasting is kind of lacking, my food and beer pairing. But like white pepper and black pepper, I don't know if I know the difference, but I'm learning. And so that's why I'm trying to do, you know, these tastings and these videos to maybe help someone else. So with that being said, I have quite a few beers left to taste before basically tomorrow. And the reason is because our class ends on Monday. Sunday is a holiday, and then my instructor is in New Zealand, so she's basically like a full day ahead of me. So if I want her to review anything, I have to get it done like today because it'll be Friday for her. It's confusing. So I'm only going to do a couple more. There's a module where I haven't done yet with like skunked beer and like light struck. I'm not going to do that because I know it's going to taste gross, and I'm not going to waste my money on beer that I'm not going to drink. So I'm going to do the hazy IPA and the Saison. So the Saison of choice that I have is this white picket fence from Bellwoods in Toronto. And I say Saison of choice when really it's the only can of Saison. Like this one can was the only can at the LCBO when I went to buy beer. I'm not sure what's happening in between Toronto and like Detroit where we're in this dead zone and we can't get certain beers, but like I'll never see a Saison DuPont. There was like a local smaller like craft brewery that had a really nice Saison, like an award-winning true to style Saison, and I haven't seen that in over a year. So I get what I can get basically. So and I have a friend that brews here, and so I texted her and I said, would you say this is like true to style? And a Saison is really hard to find like a true to style because it could be so many different things. It's such a wide range. So she said like, not really, but considering this is all I can get, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do my SAT based on this. So this is what they are calling a blended Foeder Saison. And so basically, if you're not familiar with what a foeder is, it's a large, they don't have a picture here, it's a really large wooden barrel, like, you know, taller than the average human person. So basically, like if you think of a lot of wine styles go into barrels, it's the same idea, it's just larger. And the idea is it's there for aging. So you might get some barrel characteristics from it, like from the wood. The other idea is that usually it just stays like whatever's in there stays in there. So it's not usually like being cleaned in between. It's there to kind of keep things like funky. So you would take beer out and then you would put beer back in, and you might even not empty it out before you put new beer in, and you just blend it. And so the idea is that it keeps things kind of funky but contained, because you don't want that like flying around your brewery. So a lot of breweries that do this kind of style or like sour styles, they'll have like a lot of these foeders. So that's what this is. I've had it before. I don't remember what it tasted like, so it's gonna be fun. So normally, I think I've talked about this before too, when you're doing a tasting, you want a glass that's not too big, because you're only gonna pour a few ounces of sample. It's better if it's like narrower at the top than at the bottom, because you can sort of swirl, and then you can sort of like trap those volatile aromas in there, and then you can give a sniff. Yeah. And something else that the SAT, like we've done in the SAT, which I normally would not have done before because I don't like wasting beer, but it makes a lot of sense. So because we are tasting and smelling, we start with the aroma part and just like looking at the characteristics. So basically, we're holding it for a while and we're trying to swirl it and smell it. And every time we do that, it releases, carbonation, it releases the aromas, but then it's getting warm. So what we've actually been doing is pouring a little sample, doing all of that initial, note taking, and then we dump the sample and then pour a fresh one. And again, I don't like wasting beer, but when I started trying like that sample without dumping first, it was flat and it was just like no character at all. So I thought, I'm only like, losing a few ounces here, so it's not that big of a deal. I'd rather get like a really clear, good pour that I can taste. Okay, so I've got my sample tasting glass, I've got my beer, I've got my dump glass, and then I've got water just in case I need to like refresh in between sips. So here we go. So another thing that I never really thought about was when we pour beer, a lot of times we tend to pour it down the side because we don't want it to get too foamy. But since we're only pouring a little sample right now with WSET, they recommend that you pour just straight down the middle so you can build up a little of that foam. And I thought, okay, that makes sense too. So that's what we're gonna do. That's probably more than I needed, but whatever. So, okay. Now I've got like that, I can see like what the head looks like. This is a really nice color. So we just look at like the basic stuff. So like, what's the clarity like? It's very clear. And there's ways to sort of, check that. Like, can you put like paper behind it and read the words kind of thing? And yes, we can. So I would say clear. I'm going to try and take notes as I do this, because normally I would do it on my computer and fill out the form, but I don't have that with me right now. So it's clear. The color is, I would say, straw, which is usually like the lightest color that we see with beers. It really doesn't get lighter than this. Like if you think of like American lager, or a light lager, they're not going to look much lighter than that. So we're going to say clear, and I'm going to write down that I'm doing the Saison. Clear straw. Now, when I poured it, it had a really nice like foam, which I would say is like a medium. It's not super carbonated, but it's probably more carbonated than, a lot of other beers. So I would say medium. And then we can also talk about how long does that foam last? Like what is the head retention? And then what color is the foam? Because that gives us an idea of the malt that's being used. All right, so that kind of takes us through the basics of the visual. You can also look at other things like, do you see any sort of sediment? Like if it's a bottle conditioned beer, did you get any yeast in there? you know, those are the main things. So now we do our aroma portion where we're smelling. This is orthonasally, so when you just are smelling something. So you could do it a couple ways. Can you smell it from down here? I did actually smell it from down there. So can you smell it from down here? Do you have to wait till you get up here? You know, do you want to just like swirl it? Do it that way. I get, I want to say like apple, but I'm getting the aroma in general. I'm not necessarily deciding what it is yet, but I'm getting the aroma, and it's down here. So for me, you know, our options are light, medium, and pronounced. I would almost say pronounced, because there are a lot of beers that I've tried in my life, a lot, and I don't smell anything until it's right up in my nose. But this one I get down here. So I'm going to say pronounced. And then now we look at what are we smelling. So like I said, apple. And I know some people will even go as far as to say like green apple, red apple, whatever. I don't know. The fact that I can get apple is like amazing. Okay. So it's really nice smelling beer, and I don't remember liking it before. So like, I don't know what I was doing. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I ate something and I didn't like it after I tried a sip. And that's something that can happen too. Like, what you're eating impacts what you're drinking. So if you're just sitting to do tasting and you want to try and get a feel of the characteristics of the beer itself by itself, you know, make sure you're not, you know, you haven't like just brushed your teeth, you haven't had something else that's strong, like a coffee or like a wine or whatever. You know, you want to try and be in an area that's free of like other smells and aromas. So, yeah, I don't know what I did last time, but I remember I was like, oh, okay. I feel like with a lot of beers, I tend to just say like it's grassy. And in my mind, it's not necessarily like green grass. It's more like hay, and hay is like a separate, you know, characteristic I could put down. But I'm assuming this is using like excuse me, mostly like base malts. So like a pale malt or maybe a pilsner. There's like no color in here whatsoever, so I know that there aren't any like crystal caramel type malts. There's no roasted, you know, dark type malts. So a lot of times when you have just the base malts, the lighter ones, for me it comes across as like a little more floral and hay. But a lot of people too get like those bread characteristics, like water crackers and bread dough, and I'm not getting that right now. It really is like a pleasant aroma. So for right now, I'm going to leave it at hay, because I'm not getting a whole lot else. So sadly, I'm going to dump my sample. Bye, sample. I'm going to pour a fresh one. I don't need a fresh glass, but I need a fresh sample. There's that nice head. And now I'm going to taste it. And again, people taste differently. They sip, sip, sip. They sip and spit. You know, maybe they actually swallow it. You know, I feel like you can't really taste it unless you're swallowing it. So that's what I do. Also, again, I don't want to waste. I also, too, give it like a quick swish, just to kind of judge the carbonation level. That's really light. That's really light. I'm still getting like that hay, but also some bitterness, which is very interesting. And normally when we talk about beer, bitterness is usually going to come from the hops, but it can also come from like darker roasted malts. obviously it's not from the malt in this case. So I would say there's probably some hop bitterness somewhere. And maybe like a general tropical fruit. Again, you could break it down if you're good at that. Like you could say guava, papaya, mango. If not, you could just say tropical. There's a section for, like, I talked about floral. I'm not gonna know if it's geranium, maybe lavender, but like jasmine, I don't know. So there's a section where you can just say blossom, and that just means like a floral character. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with my skills. I think the carbonation is really nice. I'm gonna flip over my sheet. It's really good. I would say it's medium. It's not like champagne, like wow, but it's also not low. I would consider a low carbonated beer to be maybe like a cask ale or like a really true to style stout. And most beers are gonna be in the medium range. Like that's just kind of standard. So I'm gonna say medium carb. The alcohol, this is what I find kind of interesting. So the alcohol on here is 5.6. So for WSET, this falls in the medium range. So they have like a breakdown of 4 different categories. It's 0 to 4, 4.1 to 5.9, 6 to 9, and then above 9. So this is considered a medium. But, you know, in Canada, it's considered a strong beer because it's over 5.5. So, whatever, Canada. So, we're going to say medium ABV. The body is very light because that it's a light style of beer. It's got, like, that nice carbonation to sort of, like, you know, lift it off your palate. So, yeah, light body. And then from here, we look at the other things that we looked at before. One difference is the bitterness and the sweetness. So, again, I think the bitterness is pretty, like, it's easy to pick out. I wouldn't say it's high, and I wouldn't say it's low, like in a regular lager. So I would say medium. And then we look at sweetness, and a lot of beers are not going to be sweet. They might just be perceived as sweet because of what we're tasting and smelling. So this beer, however, is light and sort of what we call dry. So to me, that says that a lot of the sugar has been consumed during fermentation. So I don't get like any sweetness at all. And then we look at, like, when we drink it, are the aroma characteristics and they're not flavors, but they're aromas, like, are they changing as we drink it? So once we take a sip and we swallow, kind of breathe out our nose, are they changing? Are we getting something different? So we take a sip. And we sort of, whatever we just swallowed, we sort of breathe out our nose, and that kind of brings those aromas back through our nose to smell it. And so we look at, are they different? Are we getting more? Are we getting, you know, less? I don't think that's possible, but I would say I get chamomile this time. And again, that's kind of like a grassy type of tea. So I tend to use chamomile a lot when I can't place grassy, hay, floral separately. I say chamomile. And then we look at, what is the intensity? Like when we smelled it, and it was like, okay, I smell it down here. When we taste it, is it that intense in the mouth? We look at the finish. I've taken a sip, I've swallowed it. Is it gone right away? Is it lasting a really long time? Like the bitterness is just lingering? Or is it kind of in the middle where it's like, yeah, okay. I would say this one's low. Or short. This is a short finish because once I swallow it, like, it's gone. And I actually am not sure why I didn't like this beer the first time. I think it's quite pleasant. This is also a beer that was on sale. And so it was, oof. Today is April 2nd, 2026. This was packaged April 16th, 2025. So it's not the freshest example, but I was going to say it's a good springtime beer. So it's technically spring, so I'm going to finish drinking it, even though it's like freezing temperatures and raining outside. So then we look at basically after that, you know, with our SAT, what is the overall quality? Is it an outstanding example? Is it like, does it have a lot of problems? You know, how would you rate it? And they've got these ABCs, and each one sort of, you know, represents a different part of the tasting. So A, absence of fault; B, balance; C, complexity and definition. Complexity is how many different characteristics can you pick out, and then definition is basically how well defined each of those aromas are. So you could pick out, you know, 5 different aroma and tastes, and then when you're actually like drinking it and smelling it, like, is it very obvious that it's, you know, apple or pear or peach, or is it just sort of like, oh, it's a fruit, like I'm getting a fruit, but I don't know what kind of fruit. And then we've got on the back expressiveness. So basically, like, does this beer explain to you just from drinking it, like, how it was made, and is it more like true to style? So, you know, you would look at like the malt that's maybe used, like, you know, if you know how a Saison is made, are you getting those characteristics? And Saison, again, probably not the best style because it can be made so differently depending on who's making it. But like, say a traditional like stout, like, you know, are you getting that chocolate and some of that, you know, roasted barley quality? Is it malty? Is it like low carbonation? Like, you know, and that kind of tells you how the beer was made. So is this beer expressive of the style? And then you basically put all that together and you say, yes, this beer was great. It was a great example. This is my overall conclusion. You know, it's a light beer. It's I feel like I should pour more as I'm talking. There we go. So yeah, you would say Saisons are usually light, effervescent. They have some of the pomme fruit, like the apple and the pear. They're spicy, which is more white pepper, you know. So I would say this is a good example. It's fun to drink. It's easy to drink. The alcohol is not that high. It's considered high, but it's, you know, around a 5.5% beer, so it's not super high. So yeah, I mean, I would say this is an outstanding example. And I did just read that they have released this year's batch, so now I can get like a fresh sample and try it. Yeah, but so that's kind of how the WSET breaks down beer tasting, how to take notes, and how they kind of group the beer styles. So if you're ever just wondering, you know, what's the best program for you to choose, if you're new to beer, I would say start with WSET because it's guided. Like, you're gonna have instructors that are giving you feedback and, you know, doing tastings with you. And it really kind of brings you in at the ground level as far as like process and ingredients and production and beer styles and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, I would say start with that. Cicerone is more self-guided. It's a little bit harder. So it just kind of depends on what you're going for and, you know, like what part of the industry you work in. But, you know, having done both, I'm glad I've done both because, you know, now I can decide like, if they do a WSET level 3 in beer, like, do I want to continue, or, you know, that kind of thing. So they're different, but I would say probably the WSET is a little more approachable for people that are new to the industry or don't work in production or are just, you know, like fans, like homebrew fans kind of thing. However, having said that, there was a lot more beer tasting that happened, in a short amount of time. So you have to be ready for that and, you know, be committed. So anyway, that was my sort of not as quick as I planned, but quick beer assessment. So yeah, cheers. Thanks for joining me.